humiliated by the fact that someone caught you in a little lie. You immediately flush with, you become like embarrassed immediately. You can be someone with poise, and someone says something really bad to you, and you don't become humiliated. You actually do a self-deprecating joke, diffuse the situation, and do it. So how we manage internal intensities, humiliation, pride, hatred, and love, and things like that are very social things, are very having to do with, particularly humiliation and pride, have to do with how other people are assessing your worth and how your reputation and your persona is being judged by other people. That's a very human thing, and yet it is also an intensity.
How is this materialism, though?
Well, because ultimately you're going to
brain fibers firing in the brain, like neurotransmissions and so on.
Partly, but I would not want to reduce the mind to the brain, because one thing is neurons firing, and a different thing is something that emerges on top of those neurons firing. The fact of the matter is that we don't know yet how the mind emerges from the brain, right? We have some ideas about how brain activity operates, but we don't know exactly how. But we don't know how the mind of animals emerge either. So this is not just about the human case. We don't know how the minds of dogs emerge, or how the minds of chimpanzees emerge. So we are still in the dark about animals. So we're still in the dark about humans. But nevertheless, if you destroy the brain, you destroy the mind. Even though you cannot reduce it to the brain, it needs the brain as a substratum, because it emerges on top of that substratum.
You cannot functionalism.
Well, again, I don't like to use right now all names for all theories, because I think the 21st century is really the century we're gonna discover all these things. The 20th century made some attempts at trying to do it. The behaviorists try to stay away from the mind as much as possible and think everything in terms of stimulus and response, or in terms of reinforcement and the behavior that you conditioned on people. And they missed a lot of the things, and cognitive scientists came in and said, no, there's a lot of things that happen in the mind. Which brings me to our next question. How does, and I only have 15 minutes now, so I'm going to have to do it a little fast. How does Hume handle language? Okay? Hume says direct experience, sensual experience, is not about language. We already established that, right? And has a continuity with animal experience. We already established that. Now, I may have convinced you or not, but at least we already established that. As far as this class goes, I'm not going to be able to go any farther than that. Nevertheless, he cannot deny the importance of language. After all, he wrote books, and the books were written in language, and he was a good user of language, right? And as you said, we need to use language to even talk about skills and to talk about significance. We're talking about non-linguistic things, but we need to use language to talk about those things. So language is important. So the question is, for instance, how do gender or racial stereotypes, which are linguistic categories, affect behavior? The Kantian would say gender and racial stereotypes affect behavior because they affect perception. Right? So all the stereotype of women as the weaker sex, it was part of the meaning of women for a lot of men, and for some men still is, that women were weaker than men. So is that meaning affecting directly their perception of women? That would be the Kantian answer. Or is it affecting your beliefs about women? Beliefs affect behavior every bit as much as perception does. Because we may be perceiving the exact same thing, but if I believe that this particular human being is inferior to me, well, then you're going to believe towards that human being as if he was inferior to you. So the way in which language and signification come into a human world is through the world of beliefs and desires. Beliefs and desires are called, or are defined rather, in a Humean tradition as propositional attitudes. I'll explain. This is a technical term. A proposition is the meaning, the signification of a declarative sentence. So for instance, the sentence, snow is white, and the sentence, la nieve es blanca, which is the same thing in Spanish, would have the same meaning, and in fact they do have the same meaning, and that common thing that what they have in common is called a proposition. Don't ask me why. Because a proposition, what I normally think of a proposition is when you propose to somebody to get married, or I want to make a proposal to you, that's a proposition. So I don't know where they got the word proposition, but that is the word that stuck, and we're stuck with it. So a propositional attitude is the attitude that somebody has relative to the meaning of a sentence. The attitude that someone has relative to a proposition. So take the sentence, women are the weaker sex. That's a sentence that's false. I could prove it to you right now if I had more time, because I would draw the statistical curves for the distribution of fat and muscle in men and women, and I will show you that even though on average women have a higher fat to muscle ratio than men, there's plenty of area of overlap between the two distributions, so that there are many women that have in fact a lower fat to muscle ratio than many men, and yet those women are excluded from the military and are excluded from many activities, and they are supposedly in need of protection by males. So I could prove it to you. I'm not going to do it. Right now I'm just assuming that it is false. Nevertheless, it's a proposition, right? Women are the weaker sex. If I believe that proposition, then I'm going to behave towards women exactly the same as if signifiers were changing my perception. In other words, it's very difficult to tell the difference between the effects of perception on action and the effects of beliefs on action. Nevertheless, both affect behavior. And so, a Humean would not disagree that racial, gender, and other types of stereotypes shape behavior, and shape behavior in a way that is undesirable. That is, shape behavior wrongly. Because stereotypes typically are false, or at least they are oversimplifications, and certainly overgeneralizations, and therefore shouldn't be shaping behavior. But whether they shape behavior because they shape directly your perception, or whether everybody perceives roughly the same thing, subject to that thing that we say about skills, you see more colors, you see more sounds, or they shape your attitudes, that is, just shape your beliefs, has exact same consequences. So Hume can accommodate a lot of the facts that, for instance, feminists find desirable in Kant. Many feminists who believe in signifiers because they want to make the point that the connotations of the word women, that is a stereotype of women, as it used to be prevalent not that many decades ago, shapes the way males treat women and shape the way institutions treat women. Universities would not accept women. Why? Well, because they are less reason. They have less reason. They are more emotional. Right? That's another belief. It's not a perception. How would you even be able to perceive that? You believe that. And because that belief was prevalent, universities would not accept women. Now we have proved that the beliefs were false. Well, at first women gained the right by the same way that blacks gain rights and the same way that workers gain rights. They extracted those rights from the state.